Imagine opening your email to find years of history deleted. Only a single email remains. A ransomware request for $2 million. You think to yourself, how could this happen to me? You see, there's two types of companies. Those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. The weight of responsibility comes crashing down on you. It's the sort of responsibility you feel when your family is craving a delicious pizza. You finally open the box only to find the most cringe-worthy topping that you mistakenly ordered. Join Pineapple on Pizza podcast as John and George, along with guest executives, discuss the most common and craziest cybersecurity risks, followed by actionable tips and strategies that can be implemented to protect your cyber risk pie. Pineapple on Pizza is hosted by Omnistruck.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pineapple on Pizza. Today, we've got an amazing guest who's also an extreme sailboat racing person. He's also the CEO and founder of Ockam, Matthew Gregory. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
Matthew. Good to see you.
You too.
So we start off with every show with our first question, and you know, it's probably the most important question that we're going to ask today, which is, if cyber risk was a pizza and the framework was the crust, what's the riskiest topping you've seen, and what topping would you equate that to?
Oh, you kind of pulled the rug out from under me, because my answer was going to be the crust. I think the crust is the riskiest part. It's the thing that makes pizzas different, and I think it depends on your point of view as a pizza eater, how you even get into the situation that you're eating the pizza in the first place. So my answer is the crust.
And what would you equate that to? I mean, gluten-free and gluten, or?
No, I mean, I think that to give context, I love making pizza myself. And I think there's three different ways I consume pizza. One, I go to the pizza shop and I buy a pizza with all the toppings I want on it. And I'm usually making the decision based on whether I want New York style, Detroit style, Chicago style, etc. Right? So the second way I consume pizza is there's a kind of like an artisan bakery down the street from where I live. They make amazing pizza dough. Comes in like a little cellophane wrapper. It's ready to go. You let it sit on the counter for 30 minutes, puffs up a little bit, make it into a pizza. I have a big steel plate I cook my pizzas on in the oven, super hot. So that's the second way I make pizza. And then the third is basically from scratch. Like we're picking the flour, yeast, water, it takes a day. So I think the big variable in pizza is the crust and who makes it and how you set the pizza up in the first place.
And we've seen you're not the first one to respond with crust. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But we've seen many kind of struggle with different toppings. But you've kind of hit the nail on the head. And maybe our question is a trick question in the sense that, the foundation is what generally, the frameworks is, we always saw as the foundation to cyber risk in general. So if you have it, it's like your plan. But, you bring up some good points in that, it depends on what kind of pizza the consumer needs. So, what the business needs.
And also we're talking about software development. As a software development team, I think it's really important to know what abstraction you are in this process. Either just provide, you can just go get some platform type solution that kind of does it all, because that's the appropriate thing, or you want to kind of assemble your own and bake it, or you take you could just keep going down this rabbit hole of are you growing your own tomatoes for the sauce and all the herbs, and you can get to a point where you are milling your own grain, but in the crust there's a pretty important part that just buying a pizza, or when I go get my pizza crust from the bakery down the street, they've solved the problem of there's a lot that goes into, you can screw up the pizza crust in a lot of ways by basically having yeast that is old or doing weird things. It's a huge variable. How much water you put in, how much salt you put in, do you put in a little olive oil? How long do you let it sit out? Like, does it go in? And then like all day long, if I'm down that track, I'm kind of like, how's it doing? I'm like, ooh, it's going a little quick. I need to cool it down. I'll throw it in the refrigerator for half hour and I'll pull it back out. And then, or if it's not going quite as fast, well, I know everyone wants to eat right now, but the pizza dough is not ready. I want to give it another hour. So everyone just wait. Right. So, but like when you go that route, you end up with a lot of variability, and like it takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of levers to control. So I think in the cybersecurity context, if you're going to go that way, you really have to kind of take it back to the point of the context. Do you really want to do that? By the way, there's a great pizza shop like half a block down from this bakery I get my pizza dough from, right? So I can stay home and make it. I can go to the bakery to get the dough, or I can just go get a pizza. And I think really knowing what swim lane you're in when you're in the cybersecurity space is really important, because the hole is arguably infinitely deep compared to where most people are starting off when they start thinking about security, threat modeling, detection, cryptography. I mean, people have spent their whole lives focused on minuscule little pieces of this. And like, do you or your team really have what it takes to go solve these big problems? And is that what is that what your end goal is? Is that what you're doing? So my answer is the crust.
All right. So Matthew, tell us. So in regards to your role as CEO, what keeps you up at night? What's the problems that you see?
Gosh, you're asking me all the questions. I like this. I think that's another trick question. Not much keeps me up at night. I probably slept 9 hours last night. And it's not that I'm dodging the question, but I kind of have this, I guess, sort of philosophy of control the controllables and don't worry about the rest. So if there's something that's keeping me up, I kind of evaluate, is this something in my control or out of my control? If it's out of my control, well, there's not much you can do about that. So no point worrying about it. Focus on things you can control, and the stuff that I can control, that means I can control it. So I go work on it. And usually working on it makes me sleep better. So
maybe what challenges do you see in meeting regulatory requirements in the software industry right now? Are you seeing any of those types of challenges?
It's funny. I think we're a little upstream from thinking about regulation specifically ourselves. I think people can use Ockam to solve regulatory challenges. So I feel like we're a little bit upstream from that, because we're a tool that people use to build secure by design systems. If your system is secure by design, then all, like situations like HIPAA or any financial compliance, GDPR, like we're kind of fixing some of those holes in other people's systems.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that. What does Ockam do, and how does it fix those?
Yeah, so we're a tool that developers use to build end-to-end encryption and mutual authentication between any two applications that are running anywhere in the world. It's a really difficult problem to go solve. I would argue we're kind of to take this back to the original question about the pizza, we're the kind of like pizza dough from the bakery solution. We've kind of assembled all the ingredients and packaged it up for everyone. And yeah, that's what we do.
And is that software to software? I mean, is it like hub and spoke, or is it how does that work?
Well, so we believe that it's important to have trust between applications at the application layer. We believe in the concept of zero trust, that as an application developer, you should not solely rely on the network or security layers to keep your application secure. So we are a protocol like that happens at level 7 or layer 7, and any application that like we feel is being written today. So like we go into the shift left movement also. If you're building an application, you are responsible for delivering data to wherever it needs to go to. And when you are consuming data, you should trust that it's coming, like it's being delivered to you in a reliable way. It's your responsibility as the person building that application. We make that simple for that application developer.
Okay. Sounds good. And so by doing that, what kind of applications are you seeing built on this that you can talk about? I mean, so how are things now when people are using your solution?
Yeah, there are two big use cases that we see. One is, I'll talk about the one I'm most excited about because it's our most recent launch. We just launched a product integration with Confluent Cloud and Kafka, so we can actually do end-to-end encryption through Kafka and Confluent Cloud without the servers running Kafka or Confluent Cloud seeing any of the data. So that's one use case, and the other is anyone that has a remote application that needs to write to and or read from a database. There's a lot of configuration setup. Things are ways you can screw it up, and we make that very simple by just essentially creating like an inlet and outlet in the private networks, so that the data can kind of like leave the private network and then enter the other private network, and you can have these security guarantees that it hasn't been tampered with, spied upon, replayed, etc.
Okay, so tell us, are there any events that people can go to learn more about this, and more about your solution and more about the problem?
Yeah, I mean, we do everything, asynchronous and virtually. So we have a lot of content on our documentation page, docs.ockam.io. We have a Discord channel that we engage with the community. All of our code is open source, so we have GitHub discussions. And then from physical events, we usually go to, and we're kind of coming out of COVID and we're a young company. So I guess we're kind of it's more of a forward-looking statement than what we've done in the past. But we were most recently at AWS reInvent. We go to the kind of some of the bigger conferences.
All right. So, and then are there any books that you would recommend?
I kind of have a stock answer to this. One is two books I really like. The first one I was introduced when I was at Microsoft. It was something that Satya had everyone read, and I think it's a really good way of setting, starting with oneself and as kind of like a good place to start. It's called Mindset. It's about growth mindsets and having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I think just coming at things from a growth mindset, from an individual level, and realizing that the amount you can learn and the amount you can change yourself is without bound. And it's really just a matter of having this mindset around hey, I'm going to go learn that. I'm going to go try that. And then realizing that other people have this also, that just because someone said something today doesn't mean that, they can't grow and develop also. And then, because I think that also is a key part of, as a team builder also, is in my role as CEO, it's a matter of bringing people together that have a growth mindset so we can all learn together and kind of collectively bring all of our experiences wherever they may come from together so we can all learn from each other. And I think that is the book Mindset does a very good job of kind of challenging people that they're challenging ways of thinking which might be perceived as growth oriented but are actually really fixed. So it's one place I tell people to start. The other book I really like is Measure What Matters. I also think it's very important to, again, when working on from a team point of view, to align everyone going in the same direction, or even I could even map this back to individually. I do individual OKRs a lot of times because I get into the future and feel well, I haven't made that much progress, or I haven't done this, or there are all these things I feel like I haven't done. It's wait, what did you say you wanted to do 6 months ago? It's hey, I'd actually check the boxes on these. I'm making progress. So I think it's a good feedback loop for just feeling like things are getting done. And then also I think it's a good feedback loop for just making sure individually and on team, everyone's pushing in the same and pulling in the same direction. It's that work equals force times distance. And there's a little arrow over the force and distance, and where you're trying to go. So I think it's just important to have everyone pulling in the same direction on a team. And I think OKRs are, while not a perfect tool, and we actually even on our team do kind of our own style of them. I think it's a good place to start. And then, kind of modify and right size for your team and style as you see fit.
I think everybody who's read that book has to customize it a bit.
Yes.
So those OKRs and KPIs, the measurings, all of those definitely change. And no matter how many dashboards you build within the business, but you're always checking those things and seeing how you're doing. But
well, the other problem is you can spend your whole time doing OKRs and KPIs and insert 50 other acronyms in here, and like you still have to actually go do them, right? So like I think like making it like taking on it's taking on just enough work that it is beneficial, but not overbearing, overweighting for what you actually need to get done. Is there's a point where you just have to say good enough, and this is the way we're going to do it.
No paralysis by analysis as well.
Totally, exactly.
Well, so Matthew, what excites you about the future? What do you see happening, in the software industry, the communication, the communications between these? What excites you about this?
I mean, I just love the growth and the potential of everything that we're all building, everything that people are listening to your podcast are building. You earlier asked about events, and I think we're kind of in a mode right now where people are bummed out about the economy. Silicon Valley Bank just crashed. People are getting laid off. And you just, but I juxtapose. So it's easy, kind of like we're kind of like in this recessionary sort of thing. But my impression of going to reInvent, just people talking about cloud computing and what we're building, it's like it still looks infinite from where we're currently standing. There's so much to be done, and there's so many people working on such cool things, and just the confluence of all these things coming together and building the systems that we all have, like, to kind of realize that vision we have for the in the future, where machines, people interacting with machines, applications, cloud, all this data is actually usable in a compatible sort of way, so that we can have these more autonomous systems. Everyone's kind of jumping into AI right now, but that's like, even like, imagine what that looks like when you actually have the data and the connectivity and the across platforms with the right permissions, and only so much permissions without giving everyone all your data. I mean, there's just like so many dimensions of this Rubik's Cube as you spin it around. And just think of all the cool stuff we get to all go build for like decades. Like, I'm not worried about what I'm going to do like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. There's just still so much to build. So as a builder, that excites me. I think there's just a lot of cool, interesting problems. And as we solve some, it opens up doors to go solve the next set of problems. So that's what really excites me.
And I think that, walking hand in hand in that, I mean, the cybersecurity industry as well as the software industry, I mean, there's lots of new challenges that are going to be created by both AI and the future. I mean, we haven't been able to solve a lot of these problems in the past because it's ever evolving. And I think that's going to continue regardless of AI or other new technologies. So,
not to be nostalgic, but I remember the very first AWS Invent conference, or reInvent, or reInvent.
I may have been there. I'm not sure if I was at the first one or the second one. I was at Heroku at the time. We were a huge AWS customer, and went to the first one or two. So we may have been there together.
Yeah, we went to the first one, and I think we were Amazon partner number 60 something at the time. We were like one of their very first partners. John, maybe you remember better than I do, but it was attended very. I mean, there was a lot of people there. I remember being surprised how many people were there. I couldn't consider it was their inaugural conference, but you talk about these or we talk about in general the the maturity of or the futures, and maturity of utilizing let's call it what we call it today, which is cloud. Well, how is that going to evolve? How's that going to change? And I think back then there was even concerns about no, there were concerns, like everyone was afraid of it, to use it.
Oh yeah.
Right? That was the idea of still building things on premise, was that's the only way to keep things secure, right? But it didn't take long for people to figure out that everyone was really going to be compromised, whether they like it or not, right? I mean, even today you could argue that that's still the case. And so whether something's in the cloud or not is, I don't think that's an issue anymore for most, just call them innovative companies, whereas you still have traditional brick and mortar companies that are like, no, I'm not putting that stuff in Amazon. So it's not as often. Or Azure, wherever they think they want to put it.
Well, I think that, this is one of the things that we are one of the applications for Ockam is you don't have to worry about your data passing through some sort of cloud because you're the only one with the keys to the data. So, I started off talking about this Confluent Cloud use case. Like, yeah, everyone should trust Confluent Cloud, but it also, when you are thinking about your attack surface and stuff to manage, simpler is easier to secure, right? It's like, duh, it's so obvious. So, like, even though you trust all these intermediaries that you have to deal with to build a complicated system, and really you should, but again, control the controllables. Like, if you can make it so you're not exposed to all of these things, because errors happen, people are still involved in the system. There's an edge case here and an edge case there. You can't be paying attention to everything all the time. It's just reducing your attack surface is something that I think is a very prudent thing for people to be doing. Yeah, did you by any chance go to the reInvent this year?
Oh, we haven't been to reInvent in years.
Oh, got it. Yeah, I haven't been in a while either, because when I was at Heroku, I went to two of them, I think. And then I was at Microsoft. So I was kind of in the Microsoft Azure world for a while, and it was kind of, I guess, frowned upon for us to be there. It was not on the event list I went to during that period of time. And then COVID started the company and was focused on just getting Ockam up and going. So kind of missed a couple more, and then COVID. And just being back this year was like, wow. Like, basically, let's just round up 10 years removed or whatever it's been. It's like, what a conference. I mean, and there's a lot of different vendors that are doing these conferences, but it's just very representative, just kind of like jumping back into conference world after having been not going to conferences because of COVID. And companies that used to be around 10 years ago are so much bigger. And just the amount of stuff that people are building and the tools that are available, and just kind of seeing it all, on the conference floor, and the amount of space the conference, and just the people that are there. It was very impressive to kind of get that reminder of just how big our industry is, and how many people are building really, really cool, very important pieces of, tech stacks that we all use. It's a great time to be alive.
So Matthew, you kind of touched on it, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your history? How did you get to starting your own company? What steps did you take?
I guess I've been fairly entrepreneurial for most of my life, probably going back to starting a paper route in a new subdivision back when I was 9 or 10 years old. I actually started my career off in professional sailing. I was part of 2 America's Cup teams, and I was tasked with building data logging, instrumentation, sensing systems. I guess you kind of call it IoT before IoT. We're moving a lot of data between boats off different platforms. So there's this kind of distributed system, data logging collection system. You can kind of think of, anyone that's watched the Netflix series about Formula One, it's kind of that sort of stuff where it's like you're just trying to figure out the real-time performance of the boats, so you can make adjustments on the fly, incorporating weather data. So I did that for almost 10 years.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, so not just wherever the wind would take you, but actually trying to predict where the wind was going to go and how to deal with it, right?
Yeah, and then how to set up the boat to best take advantage of the conditions you were sailing into, making sure that we build models for taking past data to figure out, given certain conditions, what should our performance be, and then if we're not seeing that performance, what settings on the boat can we change to get to the performance as fast as possible. So yeah, I did that for a little while, took a small stint, went to business school, and then kind of went from being a builder of systems to a builder of tools for people that build systems. Essentially became a tool maker. Early days of API business models. So this is around 2009, 10. Went to Weather Underground and built a weather API. So if you've seen weather, on Yahoo, Facebook, Eventbrite on your phone, it was probably using the weather API built at Weather Underground. So that got me into, as I said, building tools for people that build systems. My next step was at Heroku. I was probably one of the top first 25 people on that team. I came in right after Salesforce acquired the company, and that was kind of my launch into the cloud world. So hence why I was at reInvent in those early days. And then from there, I went to Microsoft right after Satya took over as CEO. This red team was created to figure out, okay, this Windows PaaS thing isn't quite what we want it to be. How do we shift into infrastructure IaaS that can run open source applications? But it's so culturally difficult for Microsoft to do that, particularly coming out of the Ballmer years, probably, that they put together this group of us and it was specifically people not from Microsoft to go figure out how to build Azure into what it is today.
Excellent. And so now you're the CEO and founder of Ockam, and you're providing, tell us, end-to-end encryption software. I mean, is it a library? Is it services? What, tell us a little bit more about what that is.
Yeah, the protocols are, and the core of the system is all open source. It's written in Rust. And essentially it's the pulling in ingredients. We didn't roll our own crypto. It's, we're using noise protocol. We're using a lot of best practices that people should be doing. But how many people actually know how to build complete systems like this? And the answer to this question is like, what does it cost and how long does it take? Like, we spent about $7-8 million in 4 years and had to build a completely distributed team to find the talent at a global scale to figure out how to build this thing. So anyway, that is all open source. It's in GitHub. I encourage people to go check it out. But then we productize it by turning into either packages and then are running it as a service. So Ockam packages are just the delivery of that software. So it's in a usable state. I guess I'll go back to that dough example from before. It's kind of wrapped in saran wrapped and handed to you. And then we have a product that runs in AWS. It'll eventually be available in Azure and Google. It's called Orchestrator, and it does a lot of the orchestration of, like you think of applications now, keep in mind we're at layer 7, right? So like you have ephemeral services that are spinning up, spinning down, and like the management of all of that stuff. Like if you squint a little bit, I kind of put it in the category of like maybe it's sort of like a mental model some of your listeners might have is a little bit like things service meshes do, or maybe even things like Mesos or Kubernetes do with infrastructure, or like Terraform. Those type of kind of like management of things coming online, key exchanges, identities, identifiers, moving of messages, all those type of things. So that's kind of if you want to run Occam's protocols at scale, you need Orchestrator, and that's the service we provide.
All right. So Matthew, if you could go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would that advice be?
Gosh, it's a long list. I also, I feel like you're asking me all the questions I have like contrarian points of view on. I'm kind of one of these people where I'm kind of like the butterfly effect. I kind of like how everything's going, so I wouldn't change anything. Like I don't want to disrupt the system, but I generally think that it's, and maybe I'll tie it back to what I said before. I think like have a growth mindset, go learn more things, talk to more people, learn other people's points of view, and probably don't worry so much at all. Like things will just sort of sort themselves out. You just got to keep chipping away. Things are built one little itty bitty piece at a time. And, I'd probably say to my younger self, like, hey, look, you're too young to see the fruits of some of these things. It's a lot of millimeters adding up to move a mile, so get there eventually, just take the next step.
Great. So where can people find you, Matthew?
I'm on LinkedIn. I use probably a little bit more of a voyeur on Twitter. But I am on Twitter, so you can find me there. I really just sort of use my account to repost things that Ockam is doing. So I guess applicable to this podcast, people can get my opinions there. And just in our Discord channel or in GitHub discussions.
And your company website is what?
Ockam.io, OCKAM.
Great. Well,
Thanks for having me today. It was great meeting both of you. And as you prompted, as an open source project, a company is built on an open source project. We're building in the open, so it actually means also that we're like fairly open for all sorts of discussions, disagreements, opinions about what we're doing. So look forward to hearing from you.
All right, Matthew. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. George, it sounds like you were
much.
All right. Well, again,
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to the using your crust in the future for other customers trying to communicate and get data back and forth between their systems. For our audience, thank you for listening. If you've learned something today or laughed or want to communicate in an encrypted way, please tell someone else about this podcast. Again, thank you, Matthew. And there it is. This has been another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza with your hosts, John and George. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza. You can find show notes, links, and resources by visiting omnistruct.com/blog. And a huge thank you to all who are preventatively protecting organizations from cyber threats.